I'm happy with that. In fact, I'm happy with everything I've done here. Now, I'm going to leave the Flinders Ranges today. I'm going on another painting trip. From the Flinders, up through the Strzelecki track to the Coopers Creek. I'll be painting, and also I'll be giving you some tips on how to keep out of trouble and handle your problems in the bush. And when I get to Innaminka, I'm going to tell you a marvellous story about a white bull. But before I leave here, there's still a couple of little places I'd like you to have a look at. I love coming into this particular area, Arkarula, in the springtime, around September, because then the place is just alive with wildflowers. They are setting this up more or less as a place where you'd come to study the wildlife in its natural state. That was once the seafloor, and it was squeezed up. Millions and millions of years ago, it was all squeezed up. And if you climb up to the top, you'll find fossils and little sea urchins that were originally part of the seafloor. I always find, when I'm in the Flinders Ranges, especially up in this area, in the early morning light or the late afternoon light, these are the times I love to paint, when the sun is dragging the colours out. And there's a magic in all this. They even mined gems in this area, sapphires and rubies, minerals like silver and lead. Just have a look, that is Mount Painter. That was probably the first uranium mine in Australia. From here, you can look out over these plains and you can see Lake Frome, Lake Callabonna, Lake Hope, Lake Blanche, all this string of lakes stretch along here. And tonight, I'm going to camp by the sea in the land of the dinosaurs. Now, something you must always have is somewhere for your lid to sit on. Very, very important. Today I'm going to cook a roast of beef. I've warmed the camp oven up, I've warmed the lid up. I've taken some coals from the fire and I've put them here so that I'm not going to get burnt with the heat. Now, I'm going to use some vegetable oil to cook this roast. I put a little bit of oil in here. Now, just as a little tip, while I'm using this vegetable oil, you remember before I told you that if you get bush supplies of petrol, always put a little bit of metho in your tank, about a cupful, and that will break the water up and your car would then burn it. You remember that? Right. If you carry the metho as I've suggested, and you've got vegetable oil for cooking, half vegetable oil, half metho, you have brake fluid. And isn't that a good tip for the oil companies? One of the things I like about going into the bush is when I have a piece of meat like this given to me. This will be superb. You always want a good set of fire irons that you can hook onto the camp oven, lift it onto the coals, or lift the lid off. Simple. Now, because it's breezy today, the wind blowing would give me a hot spot on this side of the camp oven. So I've broke some branches and I put them there as a little windbreak. And that will stop the wind heating up the coals on this side of the camp oven and giving me a hot spot. When I glanced around here while I'm doing this cooking, I noticed that there is no landmarks around. And it occurred to me that in a place which is pretty desolate, like this, you would have to know what you're doing. So what I'm going to do, I'm bringing this over and I'm sticking that in the ground there. I'm going to show you something very important, how a shadow can mean a lot to you. Now, I've stuck this in the ground here and I've got a shadow, but just for the minute, I've put a watch on. Now, look, anywhere in the bush, in Australia, as long as you're in the southern hemisphere, point the 12 of the clock or the watch at the sun, and halfway between the hour hand and the 12 is dead north. Now, that is very simple, isn't it? But why have I put this stick in? For the simple reason that I don't want you to look at the sun. I want you to do it off a shadow. Why? Because tomorrow, the next day or the day after, it could be all clouded over. There's no sun. You can't see the sun. You get a stick, move it like that even on the cloudiest day, and you will always see a shadow. And when you see the shadow, just mark along it, and you've got a direct line then into the sun. Somebody said to me, oh, that's a bright idea. I've got a digital watch. How do you do it with a digital watch? Simple. Put your stick in the ground, get a shadow, draw a watch on the ground. Put the 12 at the top, the 6 at the bottom, the 3 and the 9. Then look at your watch and say it's 4 o'clock. Halfway between the 4 and the 12, it's still north. You can't trick me like that. I've got to go and have a look at my dinner now. Now that'll be about another half hour yet. So while that's cooking, you come with me and I'll show you something so very, very special. To me, this is one of the very, very special places in Australia. Every time I come anywhere near this area, I try to spend the night here. I don't know why this is, but the sea was in here thousands of years ago. And then one night it went out, and it hasn't come in again since, and never will. But when I come here of a night, I can hear the sea. It's not really the sea, it's only the wind blowing in the trees, but I can hear the waves lapping. And in the morning, I will not be able to resist the temptation to look down here to see if the sea has come in overnight. That's what this place does to me. And it's one of the great places of Australia, and the world in fact, because this here is one of the biggest fossil reserves in the whole world. Here is where giant prelodons, coptodons, diprotodons, all these prehistoric animals and mammals roamed this lake. In the morning, I'm going to try and do a painting of what it used to be, and I think you might find that interesting. Now, you've got to admit, that's not a bad feed. I always cook plenty because I never know who's going to call in. I might have a couple of visitors tonight, but see you in the morning when I'll show you the lake. Well, I didn't disappoint you with that, did I? Because I think that has a little bit of magic in it. But the magic here has been going on for something like 450 million years ago. At that time, so long ago, those Flinders ranges there that you're looking at were squeezed up. And where I'm standing here now, if I were facing the Flinders ranges, I would have been facing the east coast of Australia. And from here right through to Sydney and beyond would have been all underwater. I would have been, say, 100 metres underwater here. Now that is amazing when you think of it. And then gradually this all pushed up and the sea drains out, and eventually the east coast of Australia came to be where it is today. This was all lush rainforests, some of it even equivalent to the Everglades in America. we had giant animals here. Giant wombat-type creatures, emus 4 times as heavy as the emu of today, 12 feet high, kangaroos that were 12 feet high, approximately, big round faces on them, called coptodons, and all these were in this whole area here. And as this area here gradually dried out, got drier and drier as we moved up from the Antarctic, then the rainforest started to recede and it got drier here and the water got less, and eventually there was just a mud hole here. And all these animals in for the last drink type of thing eventually died as the water dried up. And today, Lake Callabonna is one of the biggest fossil reserves in the world. And all these animals that I tell you about are all encased in that lake. Now, what I'm trying to do here today is to paint the scene as I imagined it would have been thousands of years ago. Now, I'm finding this very hard, because how can I paint an animal, say 20 tons in weight, and I've never seen one, or another one 5 tons in weight, like a giant wombat, and I've never seen them, but I'm trying. And I know that these Flinders ranges back here, from there right up to here in front of me, would have been all water. And these animals probably would have been sitting around everywhere, feeding off the trees and off the plants and drinking out of the water and this type of thing. And I'm just trying to get all this in my mind. And I think by coming to a place like this, where it all happened, possibly, I may turn out with a reasonably good painting. Anyway, it's a lot of fun trying. As I paint these, all of a sudden it struck me, what colour were they? Perhaps the diprotodon might have been bright yellow or red, I don't know. I'm going to get water out of that lake. Now, all these salt lakes throughout Australia, you can do what I'm doing here this morning. I've dug a hole in the lake. Now, once I've got underneath the top surface, look, it's almost a quagmire. There's tons of water here, probably fill Sydney Harbour 1,000 times. Then when I've dug this hole, approximately 18 inches square by, say, a foot deep, put a billy can or a container in the bottom to catch the water, then a clear plastic sheet over the top, and make sure you seal it all around the edge. The sun will now drag the moisture out of the lake, condense it on the plastic, and it will fall down in the billy can and we'll catch it. And all you do is make a little indentation in the middle so that as it runs down to the middle and falls straight into the billy. Now see that? That was very easy. Now look, you don't have to have one of these only. You can have 50 if you like, you can have 100. It all depends how much water you need. But anyway, I'm going now to do what I've got to do with this. Isn't that magic? And I'll tell you what, if you was thirsty, it would be magic. This system here, I think, is the simplest system you could get for the people travelling the outback of Australia, or the sea, anywhere around the coast. All you need is a container, a hose and a plastic bag. The container could be your petrol can. The plastic hose could be your siphon hose. All I'm asking you to carry is a plastic bag, and it could save your life. It's as simple as that. Looks like sparkling champagne. If you was thirsty, it would taste like champagne. This is Mount Hopeless, and it was very significant in 1856 because the Burke and Wills expedition tried many times to come down the Strzelecki track to get to here, and they would get forced back to the Coopers Creek all the time. And eventually, of course, they perished. now on the genuine Strzelecki track that goes from Lyndhurst in the south to Innaminka on the Coopers Creek. The Cobbler Sandhills, an area that I've always classed as the most dangerous, desolate area in the whole of the country. The first time I came here was 43 years ago. I came with an uncle that had broken a truck down in the Cobblers. We came up and went into the Cobblers to fix this truck and get it out. In those days, there was not even a track through the Cobblers. I'm going to just see how far I can get into the Cobblers with my car, and remembering they never had the cars in those days that we have today. Now that gives you some idea of how hard this godforsaken place was to travel. This would have to be the most desolate place you've ever seen. To me, the Cobbler Sandhills are the most dangerous, desolate place in the whole of the country. This is why I wanted to show them to you. Now, for the last hour, I have been trying to get into the Cobblers, heading for Innaminka, which is 200 miles away. And it's taken me an hour to go something like 50 feet. And when I eventually got here, I find there's a 6-foot drop over the other side. I can't go there. So I've had to back, and now I've got to try and find another way around. Now, this is not too bad for me today because I've got a good car. But you go back, say, 40, 50 years ago, when there was no road through here, and this was the barrier that stopped the people, or tried to stop the people, from getting up into the Cooper and the Channel country. Now, you had to come through here because it's landlocked on both sides with two lakes. One lake on this side and one lake on this. This is the middle, and everybody had to go across. Now, it's only 30 miles across this, but if you were lucky in the old days, you'd get across in 3 days. And if you're unlucky, take you a week. And if you broke something, could take you 3 months. That's how it went. But this, to me, is the most dangerous place of the whole lot. So many people lost their lives trying to get across here or on the Strzelecki track that in the early 30s, the government was forced to do something. So come with me now and I'll show you what was done. This is Monte Colonna Bore. Now, it's a flowing artesian bore. It flows 24 hours a day, and it's been the lifesaver of this whole Strzelecki Cobbler Sandhills area. leave that billy for a while. I was going to light the fire with a box of matches, but I'm going to leave that too. What I've done here, I've got a pile of these dead bushes laying here, and I'm going to show you another way that's quite interesting to light a fire if you haven't got matches or a cigarette lighter or something like this. What I use is a stilo, just an ordinary stilo. Now, I find in the bush where you're cooking on the open fire all the time, things get black, so I always carry these. Gives the thing a good scrub up. Now, what I've done here, I've got two jumper leads. Now, look, I connect that onto one end of the jumper lead like that, and then the other terminal to the other end, and then just put it in like that. Now, isn't that something? That's nice and easy, isn't it? Now, I'm going to show you a little trick with Absalom's fire extinguisher. Now, all you've got to do is a can of beer or soft drink, shake hell out of it, make sure it's well shaken up, and then crack it a little bit. Don't bust it right open, just crack it a little bit, and it'll put that out. See this, just get hold of it. And one thing about this is you can always drink the rest. I want you to meet these very special people of mine because I've been calling in on them for 35 years. I think it's so very sad that they perished. But in their way, I've got a lot of value out of them over the years because after looking at the graves and thinking about them, I leave here wondering to myself if I'm doing anything stupid. Do I have enough petrol? Am I travelling too fast? Am I being stupid in other ways? Because this is the result of taking stupid chances. This Strzelecki Creek, in a way, was one of the biggest godsends to this country we're travelling up to because it made an easy access to it. You could come and go up the creek, whereas on either side you have massive sandhills, and you would either be travelling through the sandhills or in the creek. That sign over there is not very informative because this is the Strzelecki track, and that doesn't even say that. And here is the famous Strzelecki that it follows. Now, this creek is the south arm of the Cooper, but it doesn't flow very often. Probably every 25 to 30 years when you get phenomenal rains, then it flows. But other times it just like this, not even a water hole. But look, you come with me up this Strzelecki track. I've got some interesting things to show you. I always find it very interesting when I drive onto these Cooper floodplains. Now, this is the floodplain where the Cooper's Creek floods out for hundreds of square miles. And the bird life here is amazing. Have a look at those galahs over there now. I'm going to drive over there and try to hunt them away. They've found a nice patch of seed, and even though I disturb them, they will then lift above me and come back and land the other side because they are feeding and they're not going to be disturbed. This is Australia's biggest flying bird, the wedge-tailed eagle. They can get as big as 8 feet across the wingspan. And by the way she's looking at me, she's very apprehensive. I believe there's a nest here somewhere. Let me see if I can get up this thing without breaking my neck. Look at him. He wants to have a go at me. He's very aggressive. And if you look at the back there, look, there's another one. Half the size of this one. Looks quite unwell, really. Now, this bloke, by being aggressive, he gets most of the food. As Mama comes down to feed him, he's up front all the time, and she feeds him first. And the little one on the back, gradually getting less feed and gradually getting weaker, and possibly eventually die. So it's very, very important that we have these protected like we do today, because they are barely reproducing themselves. As we proceed further north, it becomes quite evident how much influence the Coopers Creek has on this whole area. It floods out over the giant Cooper Basin, gas and oil fields. It's going to progressively get more important in supplying Australia with the fossil fuels, especially oils. I walked over that sand hill behind me over 20-odd years ago. The wealth in this country then, because of extreme temperatures in the sand, was cattle. No way in the world did I dream that in just a few years, that would be the new wealth. Oil. Oil and gas, because this is the giant Cooper Basin. Today, all you see here is pipes coming out the ground. Drills like this are drilling down into the ground to the oil and the gas, putting wellheads on, and then this is all pumped into a satellite station, which there is 13 satellite stations in this area, and then in turn they are all pumped into the big headquarters at Moomba gas field, a big complex. The gas goes to Sydney, the gas goes to Adelaide, and so the process goes on 24 hours a day. This Cooper Basin is equivalent in size to the state of Texas in America, and I just love that, because I'd love to say to the Americans, we've got an oil field in Australia as big as Texas. In a short distance, we've come out of the sand-hill country, across the floodplains of the Cooper, and now onto this hard, rocky ground, which is the start of Strzelecki Desert. I remember coming up here one time, and only the roofs of the houses could be seen, because the whole area was completely flooded. Then just a few years later when I came up, it's drought time, and Innaminka over the years has lost their complete herd of cattle on 3 different occasions. I've frequented this area many times over the years because my uncle Ronnie was the manager here for 7 years, and he was head stockman on the place for many years, and he worked this whole area, even fencing and building yards and that before this. So I've had a long association with this area, and I've seen the changes. This ahead of me now is the new Innaminka. the hotel motel complex, a trading post, and thank God a petrol supply, because I've got to fill up with petrol, and after I've filled up with petrol, I have a very important engagement. I've got a fishing competition, and I've been trying to knock this old bugger off for 25 years, and he's done me every time. Whenever I get bush supplies of petrol, I always add a cup of metho to the tank, and this breaks up any water that I may get out of these supplies because of condensation. No worries at all with it, and it's a good insurance. Go back to the early part of the settlement of Innaminka. They had a hospital here. They had a store here. In fact, they had a famous bottle heap here that was renowned, the biggest bottle heap in the world. And then all that died out as the camel team ceased to exist, and so they had no customers. But it's starting to emerge again. It looks as if it's on the way back. I've been filling up with petrol. This is the start of the Strzelecki channel, and you can see by the height of these banks that I'm driving down that it takes an immense flood to flood over these banks and to start the Strzelecki Creek running. This is the west arm of the Cooper. When the Cooper's Creek comes down from Queensland, at Innaminka, it splits into three channels. There's the north arm that goes out to Kungi Lakes and eventually finishes up in Lake Eyre. Then there's the west arm, this waterhole being part of it, down to Embarker Lake and goes on through Clifton Hills and into the Lake Eyre. And the other channel, which starts about 100 yards up here, is the Strzelecki channel. This is where it takes off, just up here. Right, now I'm going to leave that there, get on me painting. You see my line jumping, you call me.
Oh, yeah?
Hey, now, come on, Unc. Fair's fair.
It'll be on my line, not yours. I've got a bloke. I think I might have him too. Yes, I got him. Good one too.
I don't wish you any luck, but I hope it gets off.
Look at him. Look at him. Oh, he's a good one too. Hey, look at him.
Oh, strike me away. Strike it.
Hey,
He's a beauty.
yes. I'm one up on you now.
I reckon he'd weigh £1.5, £2.
No, 4.5, 4.5.
Oh, now, come on,
Oh,
like,
yeah,
be
I suppose
reasonable.
if
He
you
couldn't go £4.
If you caught one, it'd be damn 10 pounds.
Probably one of the most marvellous stories of the Australian bush happened something like this, what I've been trying to do here today besides fishing. And it was all because of a chap in Queensland named Harry Redford. Now, Harry Redford worked on a big cattle station with thousands of head of cattle, and he was convinced that he could knock off or steal 1,000 of the boss's cattle and get away with it. And stealing was pretty common in those days, but he made one mistake. He also knocked off the boss's white bull. Now, the boss had paid $1,000 for a stud bull, and he was very proud of this. And he goes out to have a look at the bull. It's gone, he can't find it. But he sees where a big mob of cattle have been driven away, so he followed them. Followed the tracks and followed them and followed them. And lo and behold, he didn't go to the Queensland market to sell his cattle. He decided to sell them to the Adelaide market.
I think you've got a bite.
Oh, right.
Looks like a good one too.
There is too,
You
mate.
got him.
There is.
You got him. Oh, it's only a little one, though. Look, oh, back home.
Ah, there's about a 10-pounder.
That's beaten mine. 10 pounder, it's only about 6.
Ah, that's good. That's better, isn't it? Look at that. Beautiful fish, mate. You don't know what that's worth. That's about 20 years it's taken me to do that to knock you off.
I got another one. Hey, look at that.
I think he's smaller than the last one.
Oh,
Well, have a look.
Yes, but I got 2 and you only got 1.
Yeah. Have a look at the colours in that. Isn't that beautiful? Look. Beautiful fish. There's a strong possibility of that cunning old bugger beating me at this fishing again. Anyway, this Harry Redford, he decided to sell the cattle at the Adelaide market. Now, this was unheard of in these days because nobody had driven cattle from Queensland down through all this dry part, which we now know as the Strzelecki track, over the cobbler sand dunes and got them to the Adelaide market. It was impossible. But he did. He drove them through this way and got through and delivered them to the Adelaide market. But the boss was following behind, following these tracks. And lo and behold, when he gets to the Adelaide market, there was his white bull in the sale yard, and he proved his credentials and said, right, arrest that man, he stole my cattle. So they take him back to Queensland and they try him in Roma in Queensland. And the jury was made up of just ordinary station people. And they were, say, anti-boss in those days. Probably the same as they are today in lots of ways. And anyway, they said not guilty. And the old judge puts his glasses on and he looks at the jury and he said, well, thank God you made that decision and not me. And I think that's a marvellous story because really, for lots of people, that was the first time that the Strzelecki track had ever been heard of, and probably the most unique story ever of a white bull. Look, when you come bush sometime and you come up to the Cooper's Creek or that and you get a beautiful fish, I want you to try something different. What I'm trying to illustrate is you don't have to have all the fancy cooking gear. You can cook in the coals. And I'm going to show you the 2 most popular ways. I've got a beautiful fish here. This is the one that I caught, a nice big one. Now, you can put tomatoes inside it, onions on it, sliced potatoes, whatever you like, and then roll it up in the foil. Just roll it like this. After you've done that, you want another piece of foil to put over it to go down this way. Now, the idea of that is that when you pull it out of the coals, you're not going to get ashes in the fish. Now, that's our way of doing it. Now, the Aborigines used to do this too, but they never had foil. So what did they do? They got mud from the riverbank, the clay, and they packed their fish in clay. They never cleaned it or scaled it or anything. Now, we've done this one here. I've got just as the Aborigines done it. Now, I'm going to put them in side by side in the fire, and afterwards, I'm going to show you the difference. I'm going to do these. Now, that one in there. Righto, cover them over. If they're not cooked right, I can blame you. They are right. That is very simple. Don't need a big fire. Leave them now for a half an hour and then we'll have a look at them. Now, have a go. Terrific, eh? And that was your little one. Oh, look at that. Isn't that something? Now, you couldn't do better than that in your own kitchen. Look at that. That's perfection. Beautiful. Yeah.
Beautiful.
I think you've excelled yourself. Honest, I do. I think you've excelled yourself. Now that's really something. And these are things you should try when you come out to these places. Just try something a little bit different. That's no different to your oven, really, because of all the heat's cooked in it. And doing it like this, you've got all the juices in. You put tomatoes and onions and potatoes and all over that, and when you open it, it is magnificent. You try it sometime and see what happens. It's been good having you with me again. I hope you've enjoyed the trip up the Strzelecki and the Flinders Ranges and the White Bull story. It's been marvellous. I've enjoyed telling it to you. I've had a lot of fun here today, trying to do this painting, trying to beat him at fishing. But I got something to do now. I got to go and buy him a beer. See you next time.